Well, welcome everyone to this next episode of Unpacking Truths. And again, have a guest with me who I'm just excited to be able to hear her story. I know some of it, but I'll probably learn some new things here today, as all of you will too. I'm Pastor Kendall.
And I'm Pastor Mo.
Welcome to Unpacking Truths, where we dive deep into God's timeless truths for our lives today.
Grab your coffee, open your hearts and your minds. Come take this journey with us as we unpack God's truths.
So with us is Kandi Neely, who is part of Light of Christ. She's on staff here at the church as well, working with our Path, our middle school program, and coordinating that. And anyone who loves and works with middle school kids has to be an amazing person and a little bit of a screw loose. Just saying. And Kandi, I think you qualify in both of those.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly on that. It's true.
So, Kandi, we're here, though, not to talk about Path in middle school, but to talk about the journey that God has taken you on in your life. And so this is your story. So I'm really just wanting to create a forum to be able to, for me to hear more of it, for others to be able to hear some of it, and then I'll interject with some questions. But why don't you tell me a little bit as you grew up well, I'll let you tell your story.
All right. Thank you, Pastor Kendall. So my story starts with an interfaith marriage of my parents. My dad was Polish Catholic. My mom was raised Jewish, and they had agreed when they got married that I would be raised Jewish because it was so important to my mom and family. So fast forward, I'm about 10 months old, and things don't work out. My parents separate, and I am still to be raised Jewish, attend synagogue. I was very involved in my synagogue, Temple High in Buffalo Grove. Okay. I grew up there. I was actually even in the Jewish show choir Shining Lights, which was—
Of course you were. Of course you were.
I loved it. My mom was the choreographer. I was very involved. And I would see my dad, usual divorce situation, every other weekend. And he, when I was about 10, became a born-again believer. So when I was there on Sundays, he would bring me to church with him, and I was so intrigued by the idea of Jesus. Having had such like a messy growing up family, this idea of someone who would love me unconditionally was this amazing idea. And I could just feel when I was in church, Jesus. I could feel the peace and his spirit. But I had been told growing up, what does it mean to be Jewish? It means you don't believe in Jesus. It means he was a good man, not the Son of God. It means he was a prophet, not the Son of God. So I thought, I've been Jewish my whole life. How do I go from here to here and love Jesus, the Jesus I'm experiencing at church with my dad, without losing this huge piece of who I am? And that was a struggle for a lot of years. I would say probably from when I was like 10 or 11, I actually started praying, Jesus, if you're real, make this something I can be. Because if you are real and you love me and you want me to be a Christ follower, make it so that I can be Jewish. It was like me in a way almost, you're not supposed to test God, but I was 11. So
hey, a number of people in the Bible did that anyway. So you're in good company.
A lot of people have done that. So I guess add
Gideon
Candace.
Put out the fleece and yeah.
Add Candi Neely to the ranks of,
there we go.
People who test God. So I spent high school, middle school kind of examining. I would pray. I especially would pray if something was wrong, like, Jesus, if you're real, always kind of questioning. And it was hard because my mom and her family, it was very important to be Jewish. We're a very tribal people. I think especially when we think of some of the atrocities that have happened to the Jewish people, it wasn't all that long ago.
No.
And so, my grandmother lived through seeing the pictures of camp survivors. And there is a little bit we have to protect the nucleus of the Jewish people, and you stay Jewish. So there was like the betrayal aspect for my mom, my grandma. I was so upset about upsetting anyone. I'm already in this messy divorced parent situation. And then there's my dad, who I'm seeing his life change. And I remember they did a passion play at his church, and I got to be in it, and I got to be one of the weepers. And by the end, I was really crying, picturing Christ dying. And I knew I wanted to be a Christ follower, but how did I make it work? How do you take a fish and a duck and make them all live in one place? So I prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. And my senior year of high school, when I was with my dad, it was very much, hey, this is what the family does. You're going to come with us to church. And so I went for Easter Sunday to his church. And I, again, had been praying, how can this and this exist at the same time? And the sermon on Easter Sunday that year was all about how Christians and Jews are meant to live in harmony, how we're supposed to, as Christ followers, we're supposed to support Israel, support the chosen people, which is God's, first people, and we're meant to be one. And I felt like I was punched in the face by the Holy Spirit in the most loving way possible. But it was like wow, like there's no denying this. So I accepted Christ, right there and then. I remember just sobbing and being like, wow, God, this is real. Like this is all the years of questioning and not knowing. Jesus is real. But then it turned into, how can my two worlds coexist? And that was a little bit trickier. But I also got to examine, as more of a grown-up, what it actually meant to be Jewish. I think that, they were well-intentioned and well-meaning, but when my family explained to me, what does it mean to be Jewish? It means you don't believe in Jesus. You don't do Christmas. You don't do Easter. That was just showing me how I was different than other religions. But the more I really examined Judaism, everything we do in Judaism is to honor the Lord. The way you eat your food, the way you wash your hands, the way you cover your head, the way you prepare a meal, the way you take the Sabbath. It is not, we're Jewish because we don't acknowledge Jesus. It is, we are Jewish because everything we do is in reverence of God. And so once I figured out that's really what Judaism is, I could marry the two and say, okay, I can have this as my past, but bring it into my future with Christ. It still sometimes feels a little tricky. Yeah. Because some people don't understand that. I've had a little bit, not of family pushback kind of on me accepting Christ, but there are some family members that won't acknowledge that I'm still Jewish, which is hard because you're like, wait, I'm still a part of this team with you. I'm still a part of this club with you. I still kind of pledge allegiance to this, but also to Christ. And so that has been messy. When my husband and I first got married, I think I went more the Christ follower route because I didn't know how to combine the two. We went to a church in Woodstock. It was a lovely place where I tried to become a Proverbs 31 mother and learn my scripture and raise my children right. But I didn't feel like I belonged. Like I was always kind of the outsider. Nobody made me feel that way but me. If anything, everyone was always really excited to have a token Jew in church. They're like, we got one. She's here. It's amazing. So when we went to that smaller church in Woodstock, I think I kind of put Judaism on a back burner because I couldn't figure out how to marry the two. And then when we went to our next church where we were at for like 10 years, I was able to experience more of Judaism there. We did a bunch of Bible studies that would celebrate all the festivals that Jesus did. I did one with Beth Moore specifically that was all about the Feast of Tabernacles, which is, in Judaism, that's a holiday of Sukkot, the sukkah that you go in, and it's thanking God for the harvest, thanking God for this new season of goodness. And as I'm reading about what Jesus gets to do, I'm like, I grew up doing that. I got to walk with Jesus before I even knew I was walking with Jesus. It was like my heart had been prepared all of childhood by getting to live these holidays, these events, these prayers that were said by the Lord, that were lived by the Lord. And so that's why, even we joke about, the Jews are the chosen people. In a way, I'm like, I was chosen to get to walk with Jesus through the Old Testament in a way, because I got to experience everything God got to experience. And so when we left that second church, I felt the need to examine my roots a little bit more. And there's always been a grief for me that while my children, yes, are Jewish, and I have tried to preserve as much as I can for them, they don't have the culture or community, especially in our area. It's just, I can't get good matzo ball soup around here or a good lox
I wouldn't
sandwich.
know where to direct you. Yeah.
Buffalo Grove, Illinois, my friends. That is where you should be going for all the good Jewish foods. But I wanted them to experience more of that. It's so much a part of their roots, and I didn't want that to be lost. So we started attending, which was really, really neat, and an experience unlike anything I've ever done. We went to a Messianic synagogue, which is a synagogue for Jewish believers.
Believers in Jesus.
Believers in Jesus. Yes, believers in Jesus, or
Believers in Jesus as the Son of God.
exactly,
Yeah.
not as a prophet or as a,
Right.
just a good man.
Just wanting to clarify our terminology
that's
here.
very good. So we actually would call ourselves completed Jews because we started in the Old Testament where most people of Jewish faith stay, and we got to do the whole circle because we end in Revelation. So a lot of Jews who are believers in Christ will say we're completed Jews because we've kind of made the whole journey. So it was a lot of completed Jews or Jewish believers in Christ. And it was amazing because I got to experience my childhood, my roots, my upbringing, what I loved growing up. I loved synagogue. I loved the prayers. I loved everything. They were so calming. They were so comforting. I got to experience that with Jesus. And we attended there for a year, and it was amazing to get to be like, oh, I belong. There are 11 other people in the Chicago area that have the same belief system. But what was interesting was my husband, it was very eye-opening for my husband, Joel, because we had been married about 15 years at that point. And for that 15 years, I had always been the Jewish believer who went to church. And now my husband was the Christian who went to a Messianic or a synagogue for Jewish believers. And I think it was, in a way, shocking for him that he felt like such a duck out of water because he'd never experienced it. I mean, I would see him trying to follow along, and do the prayers and do the things. And finally, at one point, I said, babe, just sit down. I'll tell you what to do next time. Because it's something you grow up with and and my children got to experience it, which was amazing. But I think it helped just in our marriage to understand. I realized how much I'd been feeling like an outsider going to that synagogue, where my husband then realized how much he'd been an insider.
Yeah, sure.
And that was a very eye-opening experience. And I think even in that, before attending that synagogue, I kind of never knew what to call myself. I never felt comfortable calling myself a Christian. Not that it's a dirty word or it's a bad word. It just wasn't how I identified. But I also didn't feel like saying I was Jewish honored the journey I was on with Christ. So I do like to now, kind of having the language and being with this community for about a year at the synagogue, I now consider myself a Jewish believer. And so when people say, what are you? Are you Christian? Are you Jewish? And I'll say, oh, I'm a Jewish believer, or I'm Jewish and I believe in Christ, or I'm faith-based in Christ, or something like that. Because it's kind of hard to figure out, like, not what team do I belong in, because we should all be working together, but there does feel like sometimes a differentiation in there.
One of the things, let me just say, beautiful, powerful. Thanks for just opening your story, your journey with us, Kandi. As I've sat down and heard some of it, it's just a story and a journey so much different than my own. And I think it's just helpful to listen to other people's journey. And I mean, in some ways that's what Joel experienced going there. It's like, hold it, I'm with people who all had a different journey, and I don't fit in. And we often tend to assume everyone's just like us. When you listen to other people's stories, it's just kind of humbling to go, wow, it's a varied world out there. And the Holy Spirit's worked in a whole lot of different ways.
100%. And I think that's why I have such a heart for either the unchurched or the people who don't feel they belong in church. Because I'm like, no. We all belong here. And you don't have to, of course, we all want to change and be our best selves for Christ. But I'm still Jewish. You know what I mean? And so that has been refreshing to feel like I don't have to give up that piece of myself. I don't feel that God is calling me to give up that piece of myself. If anything, it makes my experience even richer. And even with working with the Path students, I've been able to bring up things to them like anti-Semitism. My favorite subject, my wildly twisted relationship with Martin Luther.
Yep. Well, we wanted to go there.
I was going to say,
today.
you've heard a lot about that one.
Yeah. Yeah. The well, and let me first go. Well, no, I'll come back to a phrase when let's go there.
Yeah.
Because in the world today, we often think, we're past certain things. Tragically, we aren't. And you just shared with me, and I don't know if you're comfortable sharing in this setting, some of the things that your kids have heard or experienced. Are you comfortable sharing that?
Absolutely. I think, unfortunately, anti-Semitism is alive and well, even more so now than it was probably 5 years ago. And my children, one reason I feel so empowered to be openly Jewish is my children need to know it is never something to be ashamed of, because unfortunately my middle schoolers have received a lot of things via Snapchat, social media, Heil Hitler, you should kill yourself, you should have been a part of the 6 million. And as a mom, you're so, in a way, being Jewish, growing up in a very Jewish area, I never experienced that. And so it is wild to me.
Yeah.
But it also makes me think of others who have other races, other religions, who've lived that forever. And my privilege I've only had to deal with this for the last couple of years.
Wow.
And it's like even this year, I was at Aldi, my favorite store, and they had blow up for your yard dreidels and menorahs. And I, of course, packed my cart full of it. I was like, equal opportunity, Santa's going to be blowing out a menorah. And as I was at the checkout, it was this past holiday, I put it all back, and I didn't even feel comfortable having it up in my yard. And that was, it was a really jarring feeling. And, Joel, I'm always misemotional. And so I called Joel.
Really?
I know. You would never guess that.
You'd
never guess that, listeners. I am very even-keeled and never emotional. I called Joel, and said, hey, am I being crazy by putting these back? And he goes, no, I probably would have told you it wasn't a great idea. Just because we don't ever want a broken window or something written on our garage. And even though it might not happen, it's never something I want my children to experience. So sadly, I have to leave it at the store, put it in a box. But I won't do that when it comes to, I might do that for my house and for my holiday decorations, but I will not do it as who I am as a person. I actually just went to New York recently, and my mom was like, take off your chai. My Hebrew name is Chaya, so I've always worn a chai, and it also means good luck and prosperity in Judaism. And my mom said, take it off. I'm worried about someone saying or doing something. And I said, I'm not taking it off. Let him do or say. You know what I mean? At a certain point, I have to be bold as a Christ follower and as a Jewish woman and draw a line. And it's with Martin Luther, it's been a little bit of a journey, I know you and I discussed last year when I had to do the lesson for my students on Martin Luther. It was hard. It was really hard to separate the man and the monster, because we all have that. We all are a man and a monster. We wouldn't need Christ if we weren't. And it was very hard to know there was such amazing writings that came from a man. There were such amazing ways that he championed the poor. He tried to stop corruption in the church. But then there are writings that are so anti-Semitic that were used by the Nazi Party as part of their propaganda. And again, how do you marry and reconcile the two worlds? Yeah. I wish I had an answer.
Yeah. Well, I think the only way, as a Lutheran pastor to reconcile that is to just say Luther was wrong when he said this stuff. Yes. His thinking was twisted. He gave over to the dark side. He fell into sin, whatever you want to say. That anti-Semitism that was especially a part of his later writings.
Yes.
We need to just repudiate, which is what the Lutheran Church has done, but we need to continue to name and do that so that we can claim the goodness of the insight and the wisdom and the reclaiming of the gospel, while also saying he did that right and he did that part utterly wrong.
100%. And I think the reason I feel so comfortable going to a Lutheran church, especially this Lutheran church, is I think that's exactly what you guys do. You guys say, hey, there are some amazing works. There are some amazing things Martin Luther did for the kingdom of God. And then there are things that were not ordained by God, that were darkness. And number one, for me, it's a reminder, no matter how good I think I'm doing or how deep my relationship is with God, there will always be hate in me that I have to surrender to Christ every day, or it will get the best of me as well. I will start hating a certain group, a certain people. And so if I'm not willing to surrender that, and there are some days it's really hard to surrender that, especially if someone has been driving poorly, took too long in the drive-through. There are reasons that I don't want to give that up. But it really made me, when I had to write that lesson about Luther, one thing it made me do was get off my moral high horse a little bit and look at, number one, where do I fall short? Literally all the time. I'm sure I sinned walking into the room here. Who knows? It's wild. But also, every patriarch in the Bible is horribly flawed. They're either an adulterer, they had more than one wife, and they lied, or they got drunk, or my favorite one is always Moses. He never listens. Just like me, he never listens. Every patriarch has this juxtaposition, which makes me wonder, makes me curious, if we have to have these flawed leaders so that we can only look to Christ. Mm-hmm. If we didn't have men fall short of the glory of God, what would the glory of God be? It would be cheap grace. So Martin Luther, to me, is a painful reminder in some ways that we are all flawed. We all have hate in us that can get ugly, that can be the opposite of what the Lord wants from us. And most of our founding fathers, patriarchs, all had flaws to them. And so we keep the good and we acknowledge the bad and try and learn from it.
Yep.
And that's kind of, I probably won't ever have a Martin Luther statue at my house.
That's fine. That's just fine.
And the one here broke. It wasn't me.
Yeah,
it was an accident. But I am trying to, I think the thing that I'm seeing all over our country, social media, politically, religiously, is we villainize and make the other person not a human anymore. And if I do that with Martin Luther, I am no better than anyone else. So I have tried to humanize him too in my own way and go, okay, you weren't a monster. You were a man who gave way to hate, gave way to sin, gave way to darkness. I don't want to be that. I want to be, the good, the God-ordained side, and surrender the other side to Jesus.
Powerful. As you were saying all of that, Kandi, and so eloquently, by the way, so powerfully, I just thought of the classic phrase that Martin Luther said. He goes that we are both saint and sinner at the same time. And he is a brilliant example of that. And you've put it out in front of us and reminded us of that. And it is true for all of us. We are both saint, redeemed sinner by the blood of Christ, by his grace, by God's grace, and what Jesus accomplished on the cross. And we are still sinners. We don't ever go to perfection on this side of eternity, and we are all broken vessels. And that the importance of confession, of just continuing to acknowledge our own brokenness so that we don't get on our high horses and judge everyone else for what they're all doing wrong, because then we're all that log and spec stuff.
I was just about to quote it so you'd be impressed with me, but you did it yourself.
Well, you go say it. You go say it.
Now I don't even remember. I got too nervous. It's a log in my eye. I'm taking the speck out of yours. See, I screwed up.
No, you
shouldn't be teaching these middle schoolers.
That's you're exactly right. The other thing, and sort of coming to the end of our time, one of the things I wanted to say earlier, that again, is, ironically, Kandi, a part of your journey, which was part of Luther's theology that and all of this dynamic that we've been talking about. One of the things he often talked about a paradoxical theology, and that it is both and that as human beings we often like to do either or. And part of what to me is so powerful about your story is the both and, that you are saying how I have fallen in love with Jesus and who he is for me, and I'm Jewish. And you, for so long you were wrestling with, I have to be either or. And what your heart was telling you is, no, I need to be both and.
Yes.
And to me, there is so much in life that as human beings, we love to create either ors, when I think God often puts weird things together. Both and, he puts parts together that we hold separate, but that need to come together. And it's a beautiful way that I just get to witness you putting that together in your life.
Thank you, Pastor Kendall. Actually, I was just on the mission trip with the kids, and I have spent the last year kind of praying about, I have a very bold personality. And sometimes as women, we think what we should be is what we've been told Proverbs 31 women are. I should rise early with a song in my heart instead of being like, get up, get on the bus. Your mother loves you. But even that two things can exist. I can be bold. I can be a woman of God, like the women in the Bible that he asked to be bold, while loving my family, while being sacrificial, while being the mother, wife, friend, Christ follower God asked me to be. But I think there's so many places in our world where both can exist. I can be bold, and I can be someone not to be messed with. You guys have already seen that at staff meetings. I'm sure you have. But I can also love and be compassionate and soft when God calls me to. And so it's a really, I love when you said both things can exist, because I think that is my story 100%. Both can and do.
Love it. Kandi, thanks so much for being a part of this episode of Unpacking Truths, and come back again and submit your questions, or if you think there are stories that should be heard, let us know about those too, as we love to share things that we think can help unpack God's truth for today.
Next time on Unpacking Truths, it was thought that when a priest, right, would pray over the animal or whatever, the sins of the community would go into the animal.
Yep.
And then they would sacrifice it. So all the primitive parts of self, all the sins that everyone had done in the community dies right there with the animal. And so, and then we get to start new, right? That's the forgiveness and clean slate. But
and that can be done in two ways. That can be done in an authentic, heartbroken kind of way, or it can be done in a cavalier kind of way, like, well, I got to go through this so then I can keep doing, the joke that I always say with my Bible study, the cheesy Christianity, I like to sin, God likes to forgive, so it's a great arrangement, and that's what the sacrificial system had become.
Good. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Unpacking Truths. If anything that we discussed sparked any ideas or you have any questions, we would love for you to go to unpackingtruths.com, or you can also email us at unpackingtruths@locchurch.com.
And don't forget to like, share, or subscribe to the podcast, because you doing that allows other people to connect to this content and grow with God as well.
Until next time, we hope you know that you are loved.